A privilege. A privilege. All right, we'll play one more e4. Most popular move. And we're faced with the Sicilian. Interesting. Okay, lots of ways to react to the Sicilian, honestly. I mean, you have your closed Sicilians. You have your gambits and sacrifices like b4, a3, all this stuff. You have your Smith-Mora, regular open Sicilian. Quite a lot. All right. It's hard to, the people who play the Mora are in a cult. This Mora cult. We'll have to see what the hype is all about. d4, playing the Sicilian. c3, takes. Now, there is a way to play bishop c4 here and keep sacking a pawn, but let's keep it standard. This is the Mora, Smith-Mora gambit, and it's been fully accepted so far. So our opponent is currently up a pawn. And you can see it right there. However, I'm going to have some very, very quick development that hopefully will make up for it. Okay, e5, objectively, probably not a good move, if I'm being honest. E5, just, after bishop c4, for example, there's a lot going wrong here. Knight f3 is basic move. Bishop c4, queen d5. These moves all come to mind. But this is already concerning, right? Because now, when I put my bishop here, there's no stopping me on this diagonal. And giving me this juicy square on d5 where no pawns can attack me, as someone playing the Mora, this is already making me quite happy. So, e5 maybe should be e6. I think it's already just going to go ahead and call it perhaps a mistake. Just going to play knight f3. Simple move. It needs a simple answer. Knight c6. I'm just going to go ahead and put my pieces where they belong in this opening. Bishop c4 and see what happens. The nice thing about the Mora is you pretty much know exactly where your pieces want to go every time, and it's these three squares right here. Knight c3, of course, bishop c4, and knight f3. You don't really need to think, oh, should I put my piece here in this position and maybe here in another? No, for the most part, they all go to the same spot. You want a castle. A rook on the d file is always great. Queen d5 is often a really useful move to make a quick threat on f7. And we just saw the move h6. So, stopping knight g5, right? But we've got a situation where we've got three pieces out. My opponent's got one. We're making more pawn moves, more weaknesses. Already getting pretty excited about the prospects here. For example, if we did go queen d5, then already this pawn would be under fire and would need to be defended by the queen. There's no other way to defend it. There's no bishop e6. There's no knight h6, right? So we can force our opponent to move their queen out to one of those natural squares. That already looks like a small achievement. So that's what I'm looking at here. Queen d5 as a first move. Threatens the pawn, threatens f7. And probably the only line that needs calculating here is queen d5, queen e7, right? And black's next move is knight f6. We know that for sure. So that's what needs calculating. Queen d5, queen e7, and I can make a threat here. Knight b5, for example. Very tough to answer, but black has the move d6, which is interesting. And most importantly, knight f6 is going to hit my queen. So before I play queen d5, I have to think, yeah, I have one threat. But after it gets defended, what's the next threat? Because knight f6 is happening like super quickly. Right? Knight f6 kind of looks like an issue. So when I'm looking at this position, I'm starting to appreciate the move queen b3 a lot more because it does the same thing. It hits the same pawn. It requires the same defense. But then my knight can pop into d5 and will attack the queen on those two squares. So I'm looking at queen b3 and thinking, wait, it's the exact same threat. Yeah, with the bishop first, but then the moves that black plays to defend it seem to walk into my knight attacking it. And that's tempo. That's what I want. I don't want the reverse where I play this and then my opponent gets a tempo later. You only want to start with your queen if you have like a, like a guaranteed kill shot, so to speak. So, yeah, I'm a little interested in queen b3 here. Knight a5 should be the last calculation we make here, but bishop takes f7, king here. I have a hard time believing it, but I do need to calculate it. Bishop f7, king e7. Let's just make sure we're not completely losing. I mean, queen d5. There's knight f6. I'm definitely sure that this is working for white, but I just need to find the answer. Knight d5, king takes f7. Knight takes e5. That looks pretty trustworthy. But king e8. Then maybe knight c7 and queen f7. Yeah, I think queen b3 is going to be good enough here. We make the threat we want. Queen d5 to me looked good, but I don't know. I just saw queen e7, knight f6, and it's like, then I'm just getting kicked out. I don't like that. I don't like it. So queen b3, big threat, cannot be defended in an easy way. And by the way, this is why I was saying e5 is probably not the move. e6 is a lot better because there's none of these threats I'm talking about even exist. So this is a big threat. Is there anything wrong with castling? Well, in an opening like this, which is known to be very aggressive and have a lot of early tricks and traps, yeah, I think there actually is a lot wrong with castling. If you miss your opportunity to take advantage of a situation in the Mora, I think that could be for sure considered a mistake. Of course, castling, you don't have a bad position after you castle, but if you're missing your opportunities to capitalize on mistakes early on in the Mora, I think that's a bad sign, because that's why you play the opening. If your opponent plays it really well, gets to the middle game, clap for them. But most of the time, especially at the lower ratings, the Mora will be effective early. You'll get some quick wins with this opening. But no, castling is not an official blunder, of course not. So what we're seeing here is black coming to terms with maybe the fact that the queen needs to move to defend the pawn. But then my next move, knight d5, will hit the queen and hit the c7 square, which has to be a small achievement for me. So knight d5, we're not going to waste any more time. Notice that knight d5 also covers queen before check, in case my opponent tried to find some way to like trade the queens. It wouldn't work here. So with this move being such a massive threat, in my opinion, black only has 2 moves. And I know these moves don't actually defend f7, but at least you could say my knight is in the way of my bishop now, so I'm not actually threatening it. But yeah, black needs to play these. I'm a little concerned he might play this move. I know it looks ridiculous, but it's the only move that defends the pawn that you can play here, because this loses the queen, and he may think that these moves are not playable because, wait a minute, I played queen e7 to guard the pawn. I have to defend the pawn. So that's why I'm saying I hope he doesn't play queen e6, because there is a logical path that could take you to that move. Of course, the fact that you're walking into this bishop's diagonal and allowing knight c7 would be an immediate reason not to, but see what he does here. So my next moves that I'm thinking of, for sure, castling. I mean, this is going to be great. Bishop e3. Another very nice move to develop, because I basically want to bring a rook probably to the d file or the c file as soon as possible. Nice move. Nice move. Queen d6, so covers knight c7. There is a move I can play here. Knight c7, queen takes, bishop f7, king somewhere, bishop g8. Technically, that wins a pawn. Am I that interested in that move, though? I don't think so. It looks good, but it looks like I can definitely do better. So that's just the first thing I notice when I look at the position, that's kind of in my back pocket. But I don't know. I feel like I can do a bit better than that. Castling, always good. After castling, you might be looking at knight a5, but the reason I'm not even batting an eye at knight a5 is because queen c3, let's say, whatever, knight takes c4, queen c4. I'm threatening knight c7. What, are you going to trade your only piece you have developed? Like, then you'll be sitting there with just your queen out and your king. Knight a5 is no longer a move I'm concerned about at all. What I am looking at is castle. How's black going to get developed? Let's say knight f6, right? And what are my next moves? Rook d1. Looks like a pretty good one. Those are the kind of things I'm thinking about here. Rook d1, knight takes here. Maybe bishop takes. I'm thinking castle sets me up for success here. Knight c7 is very tempting. Bishop f7, bishop g8. I don't know, there's something about that just gives me this feeling like I can be doing better than that. That doesn't look good enough. Black plays, bishop b4 check. I don't like it. So I'm going to castle. Look to bring the rook to the d file. Look to, those would be my next 3 moves, probably. Knight a5, not concerned about anymore. This does not bother me. So I think knight f6 makes the most sense, but he absolutely has to get developed. There's no question about that. Any like non-developing move, bad sign. So like this, bad sign. This, like any pawn move would be a very, very bad sign. Ugh. Well, why would I play knight c7 and this line when my opponent's going to play king d8 anyway? Look, I kind of understand what he's doing here. Kind of. But not really. Like, I get it. I get it. Kind of want to get out of knight c7. There's bishop f7 issues, but king d8 is not going to be the move. Rook d1 looks amazingly strong right now. I'm also looking at bishop e3 because it seems to intend a potential bishop b6 check kind of idea with knight c7 to follow. So bishop e3 is kind of interesting here, but it's kind of hard to say no to rook d1. That's the most basic looking move. I think at this point, knight a5 has to be the next move. Otherwise, I'm not really seeing a strategy for black. So no matter which move happens, I think knight a5 would be the answer. So let's keep it simple. Rook d1. Last check. Rook d1. Knight here. Takes. Should be good enough. Possible bishop e3 is a little bit better, but not a position where you need to spend a lot of time. Rook d1. Simple. Again, I cannot possibly be worried about a move where you're trading a pair of pieces and you're trading the only one you have developed. Like, that's not going to concern me. Is bishop d2 to stop knight a5 too slow? I would say yes. Bishop d2 doesn't have a threat on its own. I'm not going here, I'm not going here. I'm blocking the d file. Looks way too slow. Especially, as I'm saying, I'm not worried about knight a5. Look at black's position. Black's best piece might be the knight on c6. So, yeah, you want to spend 2 moves of your own time to trade it away? Be my guest. Now something like knight b6 is an issue with the queen attacked. It's very difficult to leave your queen on the same line as the rook. Ooh, the moves are getting worse and worse. It's, extra pawn move, bad pawn move, extra pawn move, queen moving twice, king moving already. We're only on move 10. So there has been mistake after mistake. I don't think he's going to survive this game very long. Bishop e3, super tempting because obviously we want to get on this square. Knight b6, very tempting to maybe hit the queen and the rook. But to be honest, there's not really going to be moves that are stronger than queen b6 check. Forcing king there, knight c7 check, hitting the queen, hitting the rook. I think that's going to be it right there. Bishop e3 is strong, but queen b6 is pretty much game over. Knight c7 check happens. So that's why, a6 is particularly bad, because it even allows me to do something I wasn't able to do on the previous turn. So king over, we'll do this check, and although our rook is undefended, don't worry, it's check. So king e7. I think just rook takes queen. Not really any other ways to do it. Our rook's hanging, so that's why we kind of have to do it this way. Okay, so the king takes. We have a hanging rook, which I'm most likely going to take, but I think we can pause for at least a second here because the king is very close to mate, right? Very close. Bishop e3 does threaten checkmate. Bishop e3 would need this as a response. And I think we're just so close to a mate. b3 also does something similar. Threatens bishop a3. Similar threat, though. Just which way do we want to do it? If knight d5 to prevent this, the problem is the king always has the e6 square now, and I'm not actually seeing a mate because anytime you move the knight to deliver a check, the king is going to have that square to go back to. Don't actually like knight d5 here. So I think between these two moves, it's a close call for sure, but I might go in the b3 direction. I think it's a b3 angle. Actually, b3, a5. This doesn't even stop it, so I'm gonna go b3. Threatens mate. The king does need to go back, which is already a step for him, like to even see that the king needs to go back to avoid mate is already like a big move. But king e7 is locatable. He does need to find it, though. Right now, the king has no squares. The knight is even pinned, so it will not interpose this check. Here, we're mobilizing all of our pieces as well. But this has been pretty much a prime example of what can happen in the Smith-Mora. Like, why is this such a popular opening? It's because people see games like this and they're like, holy smoke. I can do this? Sign me up. I'd like to do that. Ouch. So, it's going to be a little tough, right? It's going to be tough to look at this again. But I do want to look over it because the Mora is such a popular opening. And it is so good. Like, it's a really good opening. Throws a lot of people off. Taking the initiative and getting quick development early on against a beginner player will throw them off completely. E5, already a big mistake. Not a good move. So, okay, we played this. I think it's more or less the same. These are the standard starting moves. H6. Already not the move. I mean, these are now two moves I would say don't belong in the opening. At least not this early. So, queen d5. Just to show you guys the line that we were talking about. I suppose if you want to see what I mean with the engine. So, queen d5. basically it looks good because we threaten a mate, which is more decisive. But after queen e7, you'll see that white's advantage is marginal at best because knight f6 is going to happen, d6, bishop e6. And although we're definitely better, it's not that good. Whereas queen b3 forces the same move, queen e7, but now we get knight d5 after, which is much more significant. Queen f6 would be the same story. So now, I think knight a5 was the move we were looking at, and takes. King can't take, so king e7, knight d5. This was the line that we had calculated at the end there. Knight takes e5, and king e8, I was saying it was nice we have knight c7, right? And if queen takes, check, and mate. So this was one of the mates that was possible. And king e7, I mean, this is actually a pretty filthy mate. Knight g6. Holy smokes. That's pretty disgusting. I was actually thinking of queen f7. When I calculated it, I was thinking this. And to be honest, I was actually thinking of knight b5 and queen d5. So I didn't see the nastiness that was knight g6, bishop f4, yeah, defending the knight, and then mate. Yeah, no, we weren't thinking of this. We weren't thinking of this. I'll be honest with you guys. Didn't cross my mind. I was the queen f7 guy. Still leading to mate. A little bit slower. But the point is, it's completely lost. But we did have to make sure about that. Okay, knight d5. Queen d6. We castled here. Again, there's going to be options here. Bishop e3, bishop d2. But ultimately, your position is not going to get better than if you castle and just bring a rook to the middle. You need to just displace this queen. He goes king d8. And now, the problem with this position is rook d1 is the most obvious move in the game. It lines up against the queen. My opponent just moved their king instead of developing a piece. Knight f6 was needed. Rook d1, obvious move, best move, a6. And yeah, now queen b6 is just game over. And between bishop e3 and b3 here, it's a pleasure to know that we selected the best move, b3. And yeah, rook b8, just oops. Notice how every single move is made in one except king e7. And I'll tell you, after king e7, I know my opponent was probably going to run away this way, right? Which sucks. But I was actually interested in this because it's rare that you get a smothered mate right in the middle of the board. And yes, it's possible, but this would have just been, for the people. So that's what I was hoping for. Didn't quite get it. This would have really put Buddy out of commission. But you see how destructive this opening is just from knowing a few themes. These are where the pieces go at the start. You do want a castle, but f7 is a target in this opening. So as soon as you see e5, queen b3, queen d5, those are the moves that come to mind. Put pressure and get castled quickly. Take your tempi. Rook to d1 was another move that we said was very standard for this opening. You need a quick rook d1. So everything here was kind of by the book in terms of the Smith-Mora, but really nasty position, really nasty win. And you will get these kind of crushing victories in this opening. So against the Sicilian, it's definitely a fun way to play. d4, c3, sack, and the thing is, after we get to this position, white is a pawn down on move 4, and the position is only barely better for black. So that's why, even at the highest levels of chess, this opening still has a very good reputation. It is a good opening. Very tough to handle.